back for episode 5 of the Get Hip cast entitled The Social Singularity is Here. For those of you who haven't tuned in and listened to the Get Hip cast in the past, it's a play on words, a podcast about all things social, cultural, and technological. The play on words has to do with Git and GitHub and what those platforms did for distributed development, the future of work, and given recent current state of the world, and how we can pivot our thought process and adopt and adapt. For those unfamiliar with the singularity, it's a hypothetical point in time when technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseen changes to human civilization. So let me introduce who we have on the call today. And in no particular order, because I have no idea how this will look once it's actually transcoded, I will introduce people and they can wave their hand. Harvey, say hello.
Hey, what's up?
Rack, say hello.
Hello.
Brooke, say hello.
Hi.
Gabrielle, say hello. Dr. Bobby, say hello. Mike, say hello.
Hello, world.
Clint, say hello.
People of Earth.
Malin, say hello.
Hello.
Live from the vehicle. Brandy, say hello.
Hey, how's it going?
And Chris, say hello.
Run.
All right, and I think we'll have John here joining us shortly, but so when he comes on, I won't introduce him, but you'll know the person that joins us spontaneously will be John.
Hola.
Oh, you're on, John. You just don't have your camera on. Okay, all right, cool. All right, so John is here. All right, so as a primer for this call, everyone participating today, at a minimum, watch the Netflix documentaries The Social Dilemma and My Octopus Teacher. There are a few people who only watched one of the two films based on our pre-work before we started filming, but that's okay. I'll put the link in the show notes for both these documentaries. I prepared some topics and questions. This is a group cast. We've all watched the same material, and we'll feel free to pose questions and topics to each other as we go through this. All right, so we're going to get started right away because this is some great material, and for those of you watching the podcast who've seen these films, you know there's should be no problems coming up with opinions on at least The Social Dilemma, and I'm really excited to kind of delve into the parallels that each of us saw when we watched My Octopus Teacher, because it's obviously a very different film, but I had felt like I took some LSD and went to a different place when I watched that film, so I kind of wanted to make it as part of this, because we all know a trip on the magic bus can lead to great innovation. All right, so we probably have not yet achieved the singularity, but have we achieved the social singularity? Anybody want to comment on that?
I think yes.
You want to expand on that beyond a yes? It's going to make for a very boring podcast, Harvey, if we just say yes and no.
Well, I mean, everybody I know is so addicted to their phone and mainly to social media. It's like everywhere they go out, they're just constantly looking for that hit, that social media hit. I feel like majority of at least United States is extremely addicted to social media by now. That it's taking over aspects of our lives.
Great comment. I loved how you used the word hit, because I do want to touch on the addiction at some point. But anybody else?
Well, but that depends on the people, right? It's not everybody. Some people are not addicted, but some people are. So I think it depends on
Are you addicted, Rack?
I'm not, but I'm trying to get addicted.
I remember in a previous dialogue that your one of your life goals was fame.
Yeah.
So isn't what your highest probability of being famous is becoming a social media influencer?
Yep. Yeah, you could get famous through social media too. So, but it's not easy. It's not easy. It takes a while. You post a comment or something, and you just like wait for people to like that shit, so you can get like depressed and stuff, just like what was said in the documentary. But it again, it depends on your mental health being. If you're strong minded, then then you're like you I don't know, then you might not get depressed, but it yeah. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain that, but
I think
yeah,
what he's
it's
I think what he's trying to say is that yes, because the algorithms and things are tapping into parts of our brains that we are not really conscious of. They're not the conscious areas of our brains. So I think in a lot of ways the like big data is like probably smarter about who we are than
yeah.
we are about
But again,
ourselves.
it's not a bad thing, right? I don't see that as a bad thing. Like if you're looking for something, if you want to buy something, right? Um, and you search for shorts or a shirt or like pants, whatever, and I mean, you can make a decision, but if you can't, like, if you don't like anything, and then like there's like an algorithm that is doing like search of what you look for, and it's giving you a recommendation, then how? I don't see that as a bad thing. It's like making my life easier. It's giving me options that like these are the options.
Well,
Go here, look for. Sorry.
Sorry. Do you honestly think that you are being given the ultimate free choices when you're being shown things? And I think this comes to the point about the singularity, where the thing that I found, and I thought it was probably the most chilling documentary that I've ever seen.
But again, if you look, the people who are talking about it seemed like a confession to me. These people who created these applications, right? Softwares. These are the people who created these applications, and now all of a sudden something happened. I don't know, they went home, like they were talking to their wives, and like their wife tried to talk to them, and
No, no,
they were
but
just so busy.
Rack.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can start with you can be well
Yeah,
intentioned.
you can
Like
be
I
the
don't.
change. You can be the change, right? But again, Rich, these guys work for three companies, right? This guy who was talking, he worked for Facebook. He was like a CEO or co-founder or something, and he created this app. So where were his morals when he was like working on getting people hooked, right? Did he not like think of anything? But when like at that time, we were the lab rats for him. But then something happened, right? Like something happened to him, like, and his family was affected, and that's when he thought that I did something wrong or whatever. But then again, he worked for another company, was a co-founder for that company, and then worked for another company, did the exact same thing. It's just like it didn't
Well,
make sense to me.
I think what happened is I think at one point the the one of the core guys on the show, the guy who's like basically the ethicist, right? Who went to Stanford. I think it doesn't really. Sometimes it doesn't really click until you see what happens to people. Like you do these things, you build these algorithms, and the idea is that those algorithms will do good, right? And then the business aspect creeps into it, and you start to see what happens to people as a result of the technology you built, which was well intentioned. And then you're like, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's possible for people to be like that. Like, I don't think they entered into it going, our goal is to be Dr. Evil and
Yeah.
manipulate the world. Listen, some people did. I'm not sure. Maybe Zuckerberg did. But I think the rank and file is not looking to become Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
They
Brooke.
try to do something good, but like uh, things happen like over the time, and like it just got messier or whatever, I
Yeah,
guess.
go ahead, Brooke.
I think that people need to take some self accountability, though, because yeah, this stuff is being fed to us, and there's algorithms, and like Rock said, like sometimes it's cool because you are looking for a certain thing and it's all fed to you, and that's awesome. But people need to be informed, and that's why this video is cool, because if you're informed, then you can make that decision to shut off social media or to limit yourself. But I hate it. I just don't like the victim stance on it. Oh, like I'm being fed all this stuff. Well, just shut it off. I feel bad for the younger kids because they are really good. Like they're growing up with iPhones. I didn't have an iPhone until college. You can do anything on an iPhone. And so I think, unfortunately, the younger generation is going to be more addicted to it than we are.
Well,
Yeah.
I have something to say.
Go ahead, Bailey.
I think at the bottom of this process is the normalization of human disconnection. At the end of the day, human beings are not singular creatures. We are meant to work as a group. We are all linked together psychically, mentally, spiritually. And at the end of the day, one of the things that social media has done is created this huge disconnect. People are not meant to talk badass and socialize across a distance. You're meant to look in people's eyes, smell them, smell the liquor on their breath, give them a hug, and keep it moving. And at the end of the day, there is a nefarious, how to say, sense to all of this. This is purposeful. The way we're designed, first of all, social media gives everyone a dopamine hit. Every time you hit a Facebook page, there is an addictive sense to it. That is being manipulated. That's the way we're designed. We're designed for short bursts of pleasure. At the end of the day, one thing I've always been told, if you're going to do a drug, make sure it's a quality drug. You understand? So it's one thing for me to do cocaine and actually get a ride for about 20 or 15 minutes, let's say, for instance. Then it's another thing to do Facebook and realize that I got dumber. I've left, after reading all these posts, I'm dumber than I was when I started.
Did we just say Coke was a better drug than Facebook? I think that's what we just said. And this is why company names on the podcast.
It's a quality drug.
That is true, though.
Yeah, if you're gonna do something, do it right. All right. At the end of the day, with Facebook, it is a drug in a sense. Your brain is treating it like a drug, and you get up with nothing.
The fact that they called it the attention extraction model. I mean, that in and of itself is a kind of nefarious, addictive, connotation to it. Just the name of that model. When they said it, I had to write it down and look it up. And so yes, I mean they are purposely. The fact that they started and tried to figure out how much attention they could get, and they're manipulating the ads, and they're paying attention to how long it's been since you've been on the system, and they will up their game to try and get your attention back. Like the example they gave with the kid where they said, oh, he hasn't been on for 4 days. Well, let's post something about his ex-girlfriend, and that'll get him back on and get him. And it's not for a good purpose. It's just the purpose of getting it on and for profit. It's basically a profit generation, algorithm that all the founders admitted that they don't even understand how it works anymore. So I think we're at that singularity because when the founders and the creators say the only way to stop it is through government action or some forced action, I mean, it's taken a life of its own, beyond even their control.
All right, so let's table. I'm going to move on to the next question because this could be a long podcast if we don't. Let's table two things: addiction and corporate or organizational responsibility to educate, because I think we are seeing. I saw for the first time an ad last night around some watchdog group talking about, Facebook's ethical responsibility during the election cycle, right? But it wasn't like Facebook's commercial. So I kind of want to come back to: does social media have the same responsibility as big tobacco or gambling So like, think about that and think about it. Should there be like when you hit Facebook, if we talk about it in the addiction cycle, should there be a Surgeon General warning at the top of the page that hits you every time you go on there that says this might be hazardous to your mental health?
Reading my mind.
Yes.
Right. So let's come back to that. All right. Next question. There's a point in the social dilemma where they talk about how companies raised capital, made investments, and built the tools that we're now using that have helped society. But then they make a counterpoint regarding ethical design and how the tools were built not to be controlled by you, but to control you. I thought about this. I thought about my use of the hammer versus my use of my mobile device, and what it feels like when my hammer's sitting out. And if I don't have a nail to drive versus what it feels like when my mobile device is sitting out, I don't really have anything to look up, right? So to me, it's like when I think about a tool, I think about a tool. Like if I have a hammer out and there's nothing to do with it, I usually put it away. When my mobile device is sitting out and I don't have anything to do, I kind of start scrolling through my mobile device. So it really isn't a tool. So just in that context, what do you guys think about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, you hit on something. I mean, when I put it this way, someone once asked me what, they was talking about the mind. They was like, the mind is a tool, and at the end of the day, you have to put it down. If you're a carpenter and you're walking around all day, all night with your carpentry tools on you, you're going to the supermarket and you're dressed up like a goddamn carpenter and you got your saws on you, you look like a fool. When you're finished with the tools, you need to put them down, or else, once again, we step back into addiction. They become your identity. You identify with these concepts. This, what happens?
Bobby's going to tell us about how he walks around with his tools.
It's a different. It's hard to compare a handheld tool to an informational device that you can use to get all kinds of information that you want to, like almost reading a book or looking at a newspaper or looking at a news article or checking the weather. It's a multifunctional informational tool, so it's not easy to compare it to a singular tool that's only used for one thing. Right?
So Bobby, let me ask you a question. Since some of us on this call functioned as adults before the dawn of the mobile device, right. when you had silent time as an adult and you were sitting like on your front porch and it was a nice day and you were watching the birds, were you like, you know what I need? A newspaper. Like I can't survive without the newspaper. It had the same information. It had the weather. It had news articles that were just random news articles that you weren't that interested in. Comics. But were you like, I gotta have that newspaper? Or did you read the newspaper in the morning and put it down and probably never come back to it?
Oh no, I'd go through the newspaper like, front to back. That was the thing I would do, sit out and read the newspaper and what happened to the news. Yesterday's news and possibly the weather and yesterday's sports, but that's something.
But it wasn't the singularity wasn't there. Like the newspaper wasn't in your back pocket.
No.
Like it was part of who you are.
No. As a person who I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on any of those. I started to get on Facebook, and one of those things was that it was great to connect with friends and family, but then after a while, some people just started spurting off all kinds of weird stuff and different commercials, and I said, I don't need this, and I just got rid of it. and it's easy to do, but like Brooke had said one time that before, it says, it's kind of hard. People should have responsibility to put them down, and I agree with that. Except that some people that are not as educated to be able, they find it that hey, this is great, and they think they're getting a lot of information, even though that information could be catered to themselves, and they don't really know. They're not aware. Maybe like you said, there's got to be some sort of social AA or something where you can be talked about, told like, hey, this is a problem. And starting with that documentary is probably one of the best things. I think that should be really distribute it more.
Well, I have a question. You know what's the quickest way to become a drug addict? To believe it can't happen to you. That's the quickest way to become a drug addict. To think that you're special enough where it's not going to happen to you if you try something. That's the one thing I've told my children. Do not touch it because you don't know if you're going to be the one. You don't know if you're going to be the one passed out behind a dumpster in 10 years. You have no idea until you touch it and you take that ride. So at the end of the day, human beings are not built like that. Human beings are built to try everything. At some point, we don't believe it's going to happen to us. Oh, it's just Facebook. Before you know it, you're posting, say hello to friends. 2 years later, you're getting weird with someone on some post. Like this is Facebook. Like this and the creators of these technologies know this. They're taking advantage of that.
Bobby, you have a Facebook account. You haven't deleted your Facebook account.
I have not deleted because I have not signed in. I don't even remember what my password is. So,
right. But my point is, if you do have a Facebook account, it's almost like weird if you delete it. Like it's almost like socially odd if you disappear off Facebook. Like once you're there, it's become like socially odd. Like the same way I'm sure, like if you're on Instagram and then one day you just decide I'm checking out, like everyone else, there's immense peer pressure to engage in these platforms. Like it's not just it's just like if you go to a party and everybody at the party is doing drugs, you might get through one party. but if you keep showing up at that party, you're going to do a drug. It's almost guaranteed.
Sooner or later. But that all depends. That all depends on also how old you are too. Because at some point you're just gonna, if there's a level, there's a point where you're still in a state of being formed mentally, and you're trying, you're not used like me at 51. What type of peer pressure am I under right now? Like really,
No, but you probably stop going to the party that doesn't suit your.
No, because right now, if I go to that party, I'm just a weird old guy sitting in the corner looking at young girls, right?
So mainly what you're saying, there's an age limit threshold. Where's the threshold that you decide that, hey, you're not going to start doing Instagram and Facebook, but there isn't for that.
Or the threshold of when you're allowed to start. Like, is there a threshold of like when you're
Facebook?
I don't understand why. I don't understand why people don't just delete the accounts. So I mean, I had one years and years ago. I deleted mine.
Because it's awkward.
I mean,
it's awkward.
Yeah.
How is it awkward?
I mean, you have your data, right?
Because then people think something is wrong. Like, why did that person delete their Facebook? Oh, something must have happened, and that's why they're not on there.
Phone will ring.
He broke.
Yeah, but the thing that's wrong is that social media sucks. So there was something wrong. You got rid of it. It's awful.
Next question. Okay. Who knew that Stanford had an Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence where they taught how to leverage design to control user interaction? Did anyone know that?
Nope.
No.
No, I feel like I would have signed up for that class.
What the hell is this? Like, that was disturbing.
Harvard did it. Harvard had it, right? Like that. That's how that thing happened with the Unabomber. He went fully he went against technology and started blowing places. I saw his documentary too. They ran an experiment on him, and he went crazy. And he thought that technology is gonna disrupt everything, and we should be against technology. And that's when he took that extreme step, went crazy. And I don't know if you guys watched that documentary. You should if you haven't. If you wanted to. But
the Unabomber documentary.
Unabomber. So that's what he did. He was technology's gonna fuck shit up, and then he went crazy.
Well, listen, he might be right still. So
yeah,
I just feel like if somebody found out, okay, listen, there's been numerous documentaries and stories about what the CIA has done in the past to train remote viewing and manipulate people's brains, and all of those things have been frowned upon immensely by society. Like, you can't take like a psychologist and manipulate someone's brain to go be a weapon. Like, can't do that, right? We say that that's not right. Yet we have a predominant university who's teaching people how to leverage technology to manipulate the human brain. And they name the name of the freaking thing is like overtly named that's the goal. That's the goal of the school. And it's like, but somehow this is like good. When we look at the other side, like, it's bad.
Well,
I don't get.
What if instead of doing it for Ted Kaczynski, what if they're doing it en masse? What if they're doing it across millions of people?
Well, that's more of a marketing, right? I would say marketing companies would be like the first ones that will fund any kind of study like that.
Well, they are. Because that's what the ad. I mean, fundamentally, the only monetization model, and that's what they talk about in the documentaries. The only monetization model is ads, right? So once you figure out the only way you can monetize is through ads, now, honestly, all your manipulation becomes nefarious because your only goal is to keep you on the screen to sell you stuff, and probably not stuff you need or want.
None of it is stuff you need,
right?
Like, right. How many flat panel televisions you need? Like, seriously? Like, this is the type of crap that's being sold to people.
Well, and whoever's going to pay more for the ads, right? Whoever's paying more for the ads, like the amount of manipulation that they talked about. I mean, it was unbelievable. Like, again, going back to the example where they had the teenage kid where. And the documentary was done really well, where they had the three guys kind of saying, well, "What if we do this? What if we do that? He hasn't been on this much. Okay, we get some ads now. He's got like that is the artificial intelligence to create that manipulation again that they don't even understand. That's pretty nefarious. That is like, Rich, to your point, that is not socially acceptable, right? Or shouldn't be.
Yeah, Mike, it's like that manipulation. Let's say it goes like on the president. He's like addicted to Twitter and like he can't get off of it, and it's giving him suggestions and it's shaping his view. And I think that could be what's happening right now with Trump too. I mean, he is addicted to Twitter, right?
But Trump.
I mean, I don't think that.
Look about Myanmar.
I don't think you're hypothesizing there, Harv.
The example they did with Myanmar, where people were killed.
But Trump is a different person. There's another documentary that I watched recently. It's called what was it called? Damn.
Psychopath.
Like psychology of Donald Trump. So they no psychology of Donald Trump. They're saying that he's like a psychopath and he doesn't have empathy. So he's a different person. He falls under a different class. So maybe that's why he's to Twitter, and he just says all kinds of shit which is not true. He just thinks that is true. He thinks that is true, but it's not. So those are not facts. So
I'm not saying Trump is fact. I'm saying like just a general, just like a president being manipulated by social media. What if it comes to that?
I mean, like.
Well, that comes back to all right. So they're talking about the election manipulation that Russia, supposedly did in 2016. I read another article about this woman. She was a whistleblower in Russia, and she went into an office every day, and there was like about 2,000 people that worked in this office. And her job, she came in the morning, got to her desk, and her job, she had like 250 fake social media accounts, and her entire job was to sit there and, manipulate the rhetoric to whatever she was told to do in all of the circles that she basically weaseled herself into in social media across, the U.S. and other, enemies of Russia. And every single person in that office building had the same job. And she said that there were many, many, many other office buildings just in the city she was in that she knew of that is doing this. So they talk about that in the documentary too, and there's other examples where that absolutely is happening, where you can start manipulating the minds of other people. And I think it's definitely something that's it's not the initial cause, but it's been an accelerant to the polarization of our political beliefs in one way or another.
And that's why Trump is so, like, persuasive. He's really good at it. He's a con man, basically. He knows what to say that will get people on his side.
All right, it's not a political podcast. We have no idea what people's political affiliations are.
Yeah.
We will we'll move on from that one. I guess what my question is we know that one of the biggest challenges facing our country is a mental health crisis. I think that's been that way forever, and we have a giant platform with a ton of reach that is inducing what arguably could be the dawn of a new mental health crisis that we haven't yet realized. The need for chronic affirmation from people you barely know, like that's a pretty big mind fuck. Like that cannot end well. So I will come back to that when we close out with kind of the social the responsibility that these platforms have and what maybe that looks like. Okay, next thing. I don't think anyone's questioned the idea that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. But in the documentary, I really like how the guy with the dreadlocks, how he says the product really is it's a gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your own behavior and perception that is the product. I really like the way he said that because it really is such a gradual thing. And back to Malin's point, it allows you to think that you're like not susceptible to these things that maybe impact other people a lot faster. The need for chronic affirmation, the need to post like your good experiences to a platform that contains thousands of your acquaintances and only like 2 of your friends. Like all of these things are things that you're basically buying into, right? And I think that's what he was saying. But I think the most chilling comment was from Shoshana Zuboff, who was the Harvard professor. And she said, social media is a marketplace that trades exclusively in human
futures. Yeah.
And I was like, I just got the chills. She said, I started to feel like I was in like a factory and like, I was like I was the peach. Like, and they were like human future reports coming out on whether I would be more subscribed this year than I was last year. And that would be determined how these companies would invest. I thought that was pretty chilling, and how our choice is being systematically removed. So what do you guys think about just that one comment about the human futures marketplace and our choice being systematically removed?
Well, at the end of the day, if you can move the masses toward certain health choices, toward certain purchase choices, political, it's all, I was always told that when you see the corrupt, like my father told me, he used to make these weird off the left statements. He said, son, if you ever see a crowd of people running and they're going that way, go the other way, always. So at the end of the day, we're trying to get the masses. It's a self-regulating thing. You try to get the masses to move a certain way with a certain unified thought and belief, and anyone that deviates from that, the masses will regulate them, either with shaming, or now you can't get a job. What, you're not vaccinating your kids? Guess what? You can't work now. And the masses, no one's gonna hire you. Everyone's gonna. This is the behavior, just to get people to move a certain way with a certain belief. That's it. It's no more than that. And of course, this can be monetized, but it's a way of keeping people rocked to sleep. It keeps people asleep. It keeps people from knowing they're being harmed.
Everybody was eating that Soylent Green, man.
Yep.
I feel like it, like as a gamer, like an online gamer, like things like what social media the way it tries to keep you engaged, it employs like things that like in a gaming server you would call like a time sink, where it makes you have to wait for something to load. It's like it's not like the technology can't move any faster, but you have to wait for a screen to come up, or you're watching some kind of thing spin for a minute, and it's all about syncing your time, like just taking your time. And in a lot of ways, I wonder why. What is it exactly that it's trying to engage us so desperately to keep us from paying attention to? Like is there other things that are going on that this is just all part of the thing that's drawing us in to keep our attentions elsewhere?
I think that is true of anything. Anybody watch the debates last night?
Yeah.
I didn't, but
as I was watching, I was like, you watch like Pence and Kamala Harris, and as they're debating, like they know they have 2 minutes. There's a clock there, but it's almost like there must be like a class you take that tells you how far you can push it over your time limit before it becomes so annoying, because they were both like, it wasn't like the first debate where that was just, as Dana Bash said, a shit show. Last night was actually a decent debate. But they still know how to push it just far enough where they get the last word in, but it's not super aggravating. Right? And it's like I feel like that is just normal, right? Like everything knows, like they know in a game, they know how long to play that intro before it becomes super aggravating. Like there is some psychological aspect to it. But that's not the problem with social media. I think the problem is the reach. Like the problem is a game, you have to go get it. You have to choose to sit in front of it. With social media, the reach and the pervasiveness, it's not just social connection anymore. It's it's your news source. It's people, it's where people go for their, like people go to Facebook for their news. Like, I'm not even sure I want to go to the news for my news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't know what is true, what is like, what's a hoax, right? So that's what the problem is.
Like crowdsourced news. Wow. Like,
yeah, Facebook and the news is like a whole conversation all on its own.
All right, next question. Everybody here seen the Truman Show?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you haven't seen it, Ed Harris played this guy Christoph, and he's like the producer of the show. And in the movie, Christoph says, he has a quote that's a pretty famous quote. "We accept the reality of the world in which we're presented. It's as simple as that. I know you better than yourself." That movie was made in 1998. Facebook was founded in 2004. Now, that's pretty amazing that in 1998, because I remember what life was like in 1998. I had a Palm Pilot.
Well, what about They Live? That came out in what, 82, 84?
Yep. Well, I mean, there's been movies even before that were, but
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. Like, are we just fulfilling what we always knew would happen?
I think that's like a principle of power. You want to control the population, But it's like social media just took it to the next level.
What's the next level? Because one of the things I'm frightened about right now is the decrease in human creativity. Because at the end of the day, I think one of the things that made people so creative thousands of years ago is that they had quiet time. They could remove themselves and disconnect themselves from the flow of information and listen to themselves. They could examine the world. Right now, that's not happening. People are always turned on. Your mind is not meant to always be plugged in. You're not meant to always be plugged into information.
But I also think that goes back to what Brooke said earlier about social response, like just being responsible for making that time for yourself and not getting stuck like doom scrolling in your in your news feed all day.
I would take it one step further, Malin, and say that while you might be able to do what Randy is suggesting, disconnect, when you are connected, every position that you have is being reinforced. So you have no, because you're not sitting in a bar with three people who think differently, at least about some aspect of life, maybe not about everything, but have a different opinion and talking about those things and accepting their opinion, because you're getting fed with people who think just like you, because you're more likely to stay if you feel comfortable. So you're put in a position where everyone thinks just like you. You filter out people who don't think like you because that's the comfortable space. And now, even when you put your phone down, you never question yourself. Why would you? Everybody thinks just like you.
That's frightening. That is frightening. Yeah. No
It's
wonder.
frightening, but do we feel like that's what we're descending into? I do.
Well, I say that that's my fear with the future, and that's what the future kids are going to be feeling, and what are they going to be able to do or contribute to society? As you said before, there'll be worse of a mental health problem when they realize that life doesn't work like that sometimes.
Well, I think Bob, as
valid.
someone with young kids, and Mike and I have talked about this. I actually think my kids will have a different issue, and it'll be like trust. They'll have trust issues because they're pummeled. They're so connected all the time, and they're not on Facebook. They're on primarily TikTok, and they're so pummeled with these things that seem so over the top, right? Because they're all produced. So they've learned to not trust anything they see. Like when they see someone take some challenge where they put a balloon over their head, like they're like, that's just like their parent. As parents, you teach your kids like that's not real. So they start to feel like nothing is real. And now they're in a position where like they trust nothing because they're so inundated with nonsense and garbage all day. They're highly entertained, but they have very little trust. So I kind of wonder if what the future looks like for kids is a little different than how we perceive it, which is, hey, listen, nothing. All this information we're getting is just an information deluge that kind of wraps us up in a place where we feel comfortable and safe. To a place where it's like everything we're getting is like we're getting a lot of information, but it's all bullshit, and I don't trust anything. Which honestly, I kind of prefer. I'd rather than be there than kind of if they stayed on the same track we're on now.
Yeah, I mean, that's true for parents that are engaged with their kids. Not everybody is like that, though. And
Exactly.
that's the scary
That's true.
problem.
Exactly. So to be honest, how I learned like about everything was through the internet, and that's how it is for most of the people, right? Like not everybody's parents are engaged. Like parents sometimes are like super busy with their own work. So like you go on the internet and you look up stuff, and that's how you learn by like watching movies, surfing through the internet and stuff. So I mean, not against that. Like
Is that how you learned how babies were made?
that's yeah.
Because that sucks.
Yes. So do you really think I sat down with my dad and do you really think I sat down with my dad and he told me that this is what you do to make babies, Millen? Is that what
But see, this speaks to what I was saying. The quality of human connection. You know, I've done a couple of things where I've had to deal with people who are coming off of drugs and things like alcohol. And one of the things that I learned about people who are addicted to anything, one of the ways they come back and recover is by being connected, not being shunned, not being pushed away with a family. Connection, touch, mental and physical and social touch. It's human beings need that. That's what redeems us.
And to be honest, the first thing I learned on the internet was how to make babies.
Okay, all right, we're gonna move on. Next question. We do not want to listen. If we think we're descending into dystopia on social media, this is gonna get strange in a few minutes. We'll move on. All right. So, has everyone seen The Matrix?
Yes.
I
All right,
have.
so I thought this was a good one because as I was preparing the questions, I thought a lot about like not just social media, but also the political climate, and I thought this is like really pretty poignant, right? So, in The Matrix, the film depicts a dystopian future where humanity is unknowingly trapped inside a simulated reality called The Matrix, created by intelligent machines to distract humans while using their bodies as an energy source. I don't know. As I was preparing, because it's been a while since I've seen The Matrix, but I read that and I was kind of like, maybe I am in The Matrix. Like, am I being used as an energy source? And am I descending into some dystopian society where machines control the world? Thoughts?
But if you never knew, and if that simulation was awesome, doesn't matter.
Well, that's
Always
Truman,
looking at the bright side.
Truman Show.
We'll look at the guy, and I can't remember his name, but he sold everybody out, and he wanted to go back into Matrix because he wanted to eat steak again.
Well, I think it only matters when it's not awesome, which is probable, right? Because you have lost free will at that point, right? So it's awesome as long as the controllers want to make it awesome. But the minute they want to not make it awesome, then it's not going to be so great. And there'd be nothing you can do. So like, there has to be something that's not awesome about knowing that. Like,
It's a
it can't be
definition of
too
reality.
awesome either. Like in the Matrix, they I'm sorry, Mike, they had a couple failed versions of it because it was too perfect and it was rejected.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I really hope that wasn't what you were going to say, Mike.
No. I mean, it all comes down like you know. I mean, it's what's the definition of reality, right? And is the reality just a state of mind? Is reality a physical state? You know, I think it's like, what is the definition of your reality? What do you want your reality to be? And that's like, I think that our reality now, like again, going back to the core of what we're talking about here, I think our reality is being definitely manipulated for us. If you're just on social media, if that's all you're doing, if that's what you're paying attention to. And it's like, I guess the other thing is like, how hard is it to actually get the truth? Like, how hard is it to figure out the truth these days? I think it's almost impossible. You really, really have to dig, and you have to cross-check, any little bit that you get, because what's being manipulated, what's not being manipulated.
Well, reality is perception, and will always be perception, right? Like, that's how the human brain works. But I guess the question is, like, it's when you lose the ability to question your perception of things, right? Is when that's when you lose the ability to, like, inspect yourself, be self-aware, like, realize that how you perceive something may actually not be how it is. When you lose that ability, then there's a big piece of, like, humanity that's lost. And if you're only fed with people who perceive things the same way you do, you're inherently being that trait is inherently being weeded out of you, out of the human spirit. Like, because it's if life is awesome, like Brooke said, like, your reality is awesome. The reality that everyone else has, the perception is that everyone else has the same reality you have. Their lives are awesome because your Facebook feed it's polluted with people in the same socioeconomic situation that you're in, doing all the same stuff you're doing. Not many people go on there to talk about their shitty day. So, like, at some point, it's like, well, my very small microcosm of the world is like, that's what the world is like. And I just don't feel the need to bother or burden myself with the broader problems. Brooke, do you have something?
Yeah, I think that's, that just puts the responsibility back onto us. We should be teaching our kids to question, a lot of things, to take a step back and ask themselves, is it me? Did I get both stories? I think it's our responsibility to teach the young that. It's our responsibility to step back and realize that, we are being fed certain things a certain way. If you watch Fox News, you might hear them say some things and you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You watch CNN, same topic, but their perception of it, that can make sense too. But it's the same thing and they're saying two different things. So I think, again, we have the responsibility to do that for ourselves.
Go ahead, Rack. You're on mute, I think, Rack.
You do the code? Oh, it did.
Yeah, but kids are not introspective, right? They don't know how to, like, step back and, like, ask themselves what, like what's what. So they just like, I think they will just look at the information on the internet and just, like follow it, or,
Said her goodbyes and walked out of the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Next question. So in the documentary, there's a quote that says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I knew that quote, but I never knew where it came from. So I kind of like researched a little bit. It's by this guy Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote this book called Profiles of the. It was basically a science fiction book, Profiles of the Future, and Inquired into the Limits of the Possible. And he has these 3 laws, which are known as Clarke's laws. The first one is, and I wrote them down only because, again, given the climate that we're currently functioning in, I thought it was they were interesting. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. I thought that was pretty good quote, pretty good law. The only way discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible, which I thought was another good one. So I thought those were 3. I thought they were good laws that came out of essentially a sci-fi book. So the last law number 3 is the most well known, obviously, and it's referenced in the movie. What's interesting is Clarke's laws have been researched and dissected and aligned with technology advances. And I found this chart, which I'll put in the show notes. And I found it super interesting how they align these with technology advances. One of the dissections breaks the 3rd law into these 3 high level sub components, and then continues to break it down. And he says, if you look at any sufficiently advanced technology as indistinguishable from magic, it'll have 3 main components: contact with non-physical entities. And what he does is he basically takes these 3 things. If you think of it like the bottom of an hourglass, right? Like a giant pyramid turned on its side. As you go further to the right, you have more technologies that are thrown into the bucket, and as you're further to the left, you have less. So he believes in order for these things to happen, you can't have physical contact with the entity. So if you're a magician, you obviously, you can't be right on top of Houdini when he's doing the magic. Otherwise, you'd figure the magic out. You have to have mental influence. So how to influence your audience, get them to look a different way, or get them to focus on something else while you're, conducting the illusion. And you have to have remote perception, the ability to see what the audience sees, in order to perfect your craft of magic. So I thought this was really interesting because when you look at I'll share the chart. When you look at the chart, he slides in things like AI and, the dawn of the disappearing dice and all the different things that have happened over time and how it's become easier. Cameras in the audience, RF, so that you can radio things to planted members of the audience so you can have mental influence, right? All of these things are important to kind of set up the magic act. I kind of feel like when you think about it, the quote is really powerful because what social media is doing is really magic, right? And not just social media. Think about Amazon, and I know Gabrielle and I were having this conversation maybe on one of our weekly get-togethers about hey, maybe you're not on social media, but do you read the reviews on Amazon? Because that's a social aspect to getting you to buy stuff. And I know a lot of people there's more trustworthiness in the reviews, even though Amazon has been sued because those things have been manipulated. There's been payoffs. There's plants all over there reviewing products. But that's part of mental influence and remote perception, creating this scenario where you should trust this more than the vendor because these are the consumers, when in reality they're not. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, Amazon is definitely doing magic. I love their customer service. It's just awesome. Every time, there was this one time Lost my package. I don't know where it went, to be honest. Called them back. Told them what happened. They just like they gave me two options: refund or want the back. Like want it again. Got my like it was a big amount. Got my refund back. So it is magic. I love it. I've tried it with other companies. You don't get that kind of customer service. It's awesome. I love it. So yeah, that's why it's the best company in the world right now.
Yeah, but are they manipulating you?
I mean, I don't really care. So nice. exactly. I don't care. I had an issue. I'm their customer. They were able to resolve it. So that's why I love them. Like there are companies that don't give a damn, right? So it is what it is. That's how they have like a really big customer base.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story. We bought this sofa. Like we bought this sofa from Wayfair. You know what Wayfair is?
Yeah.
We bought this sofa from Wayfair because we needed a sofa to go in the basement. You couldn't get a big full-size sofa down. So I had to get one of these sofas you can like piece together, right? So it's like a sectional and it's got a futon that kind of flips back. So the sofa shows up at my house. I think we paid $700 for it. We put it in the basement, and like 3 weeks later, probably because my kids are jumping on it, like piece of the bottom pleather like ripples. So my wife sends them a letter with a picture and it's like, I think there's a defect in the sofa. It ripples. They're like, here's your $700 back. My wife's like, do you want the sofa back? They're like, no, keep it.
Yeah.
So like, listen, that's great. That's great customer service. But that's not where my head goes. My head goes to, if you could afford to go, here's your $700 back. Just keep it. What is the manufacturing cost for that sofa?
Nothing. Yeah.
It has to be like $3. Now, in order to do that, by the way, it's not the only product we've done it with. We have another sofa that one of the springs thing, and they're like, they just sent us a new one. Like, keep the old one.
It's probably just a little ripple in their cost.
The bottom line is, if you can give someone $700 back and tell them to keep the product, what sort of atrocities are being committed across the world in order to allow you to be able to conduct that sort of business?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, a long time ago, I had this Jehovah's Witness knock on the door one morning, and he's sitting there and he's talking to me. He gets real fiery on me. He's like, "And you're going to hell too." And I was like, "What did I do? Like, what did I do to deserve hell?" And he was like, "You see this? You got the Nikes that you wear in your feet and that expensive shirt. Who do you think made that shirt? You're the problem too. You're part of the problem too."
You don't get that at Amazon. You don't get that at Amazon. They're like, "I'm sorry, I will send you. I will give you your money, and you can keep the product too, and I'll send you another product."
Wait.
Yeah, but that's the point. At the end of the day, you're being pulled into. You're complicit too. You're being pulled into the wicked web of terror that they're part of. You're pulled into it. It doesn't. It's
wicked web of terror.
That's a T-shirt right there, man.
By the way, that's a quote. That's actually a quote from a boxer that Mike Tyson beat the hell out of, and he was in a news conference. He said, "I'm going to pull Mike Tyson to my wicked web of terror," and he got his ass handed to him in 4 rounds. Like
that sounds like a Mike Tyson. I'm the wicked web of terror. He's crying like a baby. All right, last topic. So, on top of the social dilemma, which we've kind of like beat to death, we also watched My Octopus Teacher, and I'll tell you why I even said to watch it, and then those of you who watched it, kind of give me your thoughts on it. If I was like crazy or whatever, but there's no direct parallel between the two movies, but I just watched this movie that I was totally plugged in. Like, it was all about being plugged in and the damages of being controlled by the system. And then my wife wanted to watch My Octopus Teacher, and watching it. And at the beginning of the movie, the guy talks about how he was a producer and he was really stressed out and very ill, and he was super sick for 2 years, and he needed to like just disconnect. Right? Like, it all started with his need to like just disconnect. So he disconnects, and part of his disconnection process is he lives in South Africa, and he was born and raised like on the ocean, like literally on the ocean. For those who haven't seen it, so he like takes his family of 4, and they like are living in like a hut on the ocean. And his regiment for a year is to like wake up every day and go swim in the ocean. Now, what's really interesting is he's swimming in this area of like South Africa where it doesn't look safe, but that's like part of his cathartic process. Like he's going to jump into this area where the riptides are like ridiculous, and then he swims out to this kelp forest that's like peaceful in the middle of all these riptides. And he does that every day for like, I forget what the exact timing is, but he does it every day for like 3 months. And then one day he's at the bottom, and he's really just snorkeling. He's at the bottom of the ocean, and he sees this like really interesting rock formation. And it's like got shells and barnacles all over it, just kind of sitting at the bottom. And while he's watching it, he's kind of there for like, a half hour. The thing just kind of sheds all these like barnacles and darts off, and it ends up being the octopus. And over time, you realize like he teaches you like how, how intelligent octopuses are, and that's why it ends up being his teacher. But more importantly, he ends up like essentially developing what I would describe as like a love affair with the octopus. He's totally unplugged, and he's like snuggling, like he's excited to go back to the ocean, like snuggle with the octopus and follow the octopus around.
All right. It wasn't that creepy. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It sounds, but it's kind of.
Then the octopus said.
Communal back to nature and how like part of nature and part of like disconnecting and everything. Like it wasn't that creepy.
But he does. But this octopus teaches him about how to reconnect with people, because he develops a better relationship with his son. He talks about how he develops a better relationship with his wife, and he just redevelops the idea of, I don't need to be so connected to like what's going on. I can kind of disconnect to learn how to reconnect. So to me, after watching The Social Dilemma, I was like, there's something there about finding something, being able to go outside and watch a bird in a tree and not have the phone, like not have to like, and you don't have to go outside and know what the bird is to enjoy it. Like that's not a requirement of life. Everything doesn't have to be, oh, that's a bird. What kind of bird is that?
It's a hurt bird in front of your apartment that you take to the vet. That's
right.
It's Randy's
the yellow.
Our brains, myself included, refuse to not know. Like they refuse. Like if you don't know what the species of the bird is, you gotta look it up. And it's so easy to do. And while you're doing that, you're not really enjoying kind of the beauty of what's going on, because there's a big difference between learning by going into the wild and surfing Google. Thoughts?
Mm-hmm. It's like videotaping your kid's show, or when you're designated a person to hold the camera. Like I hate that. It's like I actually want to be here right now and not be looking through this lens. I want to actually be. Right. You can film me, please, because I want to be part of what's actually happening.
Yeah, this is my favorite concert pose.
Yeah.
Just watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it became so much more connected. And maybe it's super cosmic, but like I watched something today on it was 18 minutes, the history of all things, like the universe, and basically how it just started within a matter of seconds and expanded from something smaller than an atom, and just went out. And then there was like 300 and some thousand years before stars started to form. And then it goes all the way along. And then we're like this tiny little, line on the graph. And it all comes back to how things start off simple and small, but simple, but as they get bigger, like they're as they get more complex, they get smaller. So and it was just this whole thing. So I think the next intelligent species is probably going to be like
the
bacteria.
octopus.
bacteria.
Yeah, I didn't know that was.
Like
I
a
didn't know
virus.
there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know there was
That's an intelligent species.
bestiality involved, or I would have watched it.
I got lost on there.
No,
I got lost
no,
on there.
no, Rack.
But there is, like, I guess, and part of it too. Listen, he did look up like the octopus. Like, he didn't know anything about the species, so he did look stuff up. I mean, I guess he disconnected and got back to commune with nature. I mean, which was kind of the main focus about it, and allowed him to connect better with nature, with his family and other, living beings. I got that because he went from one extreme, then tried to go to another extreme. I guess the point of watching both of them is there's a happy medium. Like, to me, I think there's definitely a happy medium. You can get back to nature. You can get back to understanding how to, like, communicate with people. Like, again, one of the biggest things with the social media and the phones is that children are growing up not knowing how to, like, physically communicate. Interpersonal communication is basically, they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to register facial expression. They don't know how to do any of that. So that's being lost. So it's like, it's extremes. Like, I think we just need to get away from these extremes.
Yeah, and I'm sure he didn't break out the Encyclopedia Britannica when he got home. I'm sure he went. But I think there is a piece. Like, for me, I know after watching those two movies, like, I'm trying to be more aware of, like, being in the moment and holding back my need to kind of know now, because I can research later, right? So, like, I can go watch whatever's happened, and then I can come home, and if I want to look deeper or research, I can do that, right? And I think that was kind of like, that octopus story was more like, you don't have to like turn it off and be ignorant. Like, you can still educate yourself, but when you're in that moment, his was a dramatization, because you're not looking anything up while you're in the ocean with a snorkel. So he put himself in a situation to, like, have to live it, because once you were there, you really couldn't be, like, who was going to bother you? You had to swim through a riptide to get to a kelp forest.
Yeah.
Like, no one's coming after you. Your wife's not coming to get you. Like,
and after he scared it off, he spooked it, and he was worried that it wasn't going to come back. And then he had to learn how to follow, what is an octopus track? What is this track? He already knew how to look for that rock formation, like, from the beginning. So he was kind of without, like you said, without any kind of looking it up. He was having a learning experience.
Yeah, he's like tapping into like his nature, into like your, like, old school, like, walking around wonder Neanderthal nature. I feel like we're just, like, incredibly lucky, because, like, all of us grew up where we didn't have a phone or social media, and we went out, or at least most of us, like, we lived life and we learned it the hard way. While this new generation, Gen Z, like, their new reality is social media, and, like, they're never gonna know what it feels like to just go out, it's like the abandoned factory down the street, take my bike to the next town, like, go on an adventure, and, like, they don't really have that, like, experience that we've had.
I think that
you sound
what
like
you're
my
saying,
grandfather, who walked uphill both ways to school.
I was going to say
no,
that.
No shoes on.
Yeah,
careful,
both ways, right? And he fought off a grizzly bear with his loose leaf notebook.
Yeah.
But the thing about, though, what's, I think, brings it back to the social dilemma and all that and everything, is that there's so much enough of a difference in each generation that we're saying the same things that the previous generation said. We sound just like them, like, oh, well, the kids these days. The problem is, though, physiologically, we have not developed in any way, like, measurable way, from like our grandparents or their parents. Like, so, like, I think that brings it back to, like, are we equipped to deal with how fast other things are changing?
Oh yeah, that's something that's being explored all over, right? The fact that everything else around us, like, our ability to invent, is insane, but our ability to really understand what's happening hasn't changed at all. Like, we're the same as we were, 500 years ago. Like, there has really been a market change in the human being. All right.
500
way
years
too much.
ago.
So way too much power for the maturity of our race. I think we've had this conversation a couple of times, and the power of social media and AI comes back to greed, right? Like everything, greed and power, right? Like that, like in our inability to control the greed and power for the betterment of humanity as a whole, right? It's an imbalance.
All right, final. We're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna ask a question of everyone and then closing thoughts. All right, so we talked about the idea that there is the potential, if not already there, for addiction, right? And I see it. Like, I know grown ass people who like can't get through the day without like a selfie and a bunch of likes. Like they just can't do it. Like they can't get through the day. So there, if we don't already have a large portion of the population that's addicted, like we're kind of well on our way. So what in that context, what responsibility do the platforms have? In the same way, like the responsibility that we've burdened big tobacco with, or the gambling industry, to kind of forewarn the consumers about the possibility that you might get addicted to this, you might have health issues, and in the case of gambling, if you need help, call this hotline. Like, should we have that for social media? That's the question. And then after you answer the question, any closing thoughts? Harv, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. Because just like the documentary was showing me that they're able to take control of like the reward sections of your brain psychologically. Like they're able to like hack your brain, and that's like similar things of like what drugs do. So definitely we need a warning, especially for younger kids who don't really know or don't really understand exactly the power of social media.
Would like this is your brain on social media, like bringing something like that back? Would that be helpful? Rack, what do you think?
So you know, like how in the documentary there was a scene where they brought Mark Zuckerberg in the court, and he said that, you know, like we should get AI to help us with this dilemma, right? We could, I mean, I don't know if that was true. I mean, if we can do that, you know, like since humans, we being humans, we don't know what's truth or what's a hoax, right? If bringing AI would help. I was just thinking, you know, like how we could fix this issue. You know, like you can use AI. If AI could do that, you could just you can just use AI to find out what kind of people are not mentally strong, and you know, like you could search their like browsing history, right? And you can find out what kind of people are not strong. We're
gonna profile people.
Proactive, exactly.
Proactively profile Americans to determine whether they can use social media.
They do it anyway. They do it anyway, right? They look at our browsing history, give us like recommendation. Now what they can do is look at what kind of people are looking for, like you know, like if they saw like a Trump's rally, or they looked at some like really crazy stuff, and now they're like angry and stuff, like they're agitated and they want to buy like firearms or something, and yeah. So yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I don't know if it's gonna help, but that's what I thought about when I looked at the documentary.
Okay, Brooke, how about you?
I would agree. I think there is a responsibility. I think that you know, we could start with on Instagram, any picture that's edited in any way, maybe have like a little thing in the corner of the picture that says this has been edited. You know,
I like that.
Don't think like this is normal. This is what it really looks like. I personally enjoy TikTok. I think it's really funny. They do have, if you're on there for a certain period of time, you eventually get to a TikTok with this kid with this really big creepy smile that says, "Hey, you've been on here for a long time. Maybe you should get off the couch. Maybe you should drink some water." And it makes me laugh, but sometimes I do listen to him because I'm like, oh. So, Yeah.
Remember to hydrate, then come back.
Yeah.
Cool. Bobby, how about you?
So the responsibility is like maybe we should put a rating on when you could buy your kids a device to go on the internet and get to social. Like one of the statistics.
I like that.
One of the statistics that they had was how kids from 10 to 13, the suicide rate went up, so much. And meanwhile, when kids 10 to 13 were allowed to even have cell phones, they weren't even allowed for that. So how is that going up? There's got to be some way of stopping that, and maybe, hey, a rating system to be able to not buy it or something,
Yeah, that's a good idea. Mike, how about you?
Well, I don't think there's any question that something needs to be done, and there has to be some type of controls put in place. I mean, what they are, I don't know. These companies are so powerful, but I think one of the first things, even like we talked about it, and all the guest speakers talked about it, is like they don't even understand how their algorithms work at this point. They've evolved so much. So what can be done to curb like that attention grabbing and that manipulative type of behavior and notification? I think first off there has to be kind of an investigation of like really what is it doing, like how far is it going, on top of some of the labels. You can't cure something if you don't know what the source or don't understand the source. And I think it's beyond even like their understanding. A perfect example is Facebook, like 2 years ago, when they both created two AIs to talk to each other. And within a very short period of time, they realized this was inefficient, created their own language, started talking to each other. They had to pull the plug on it, right? So I think it's a lot scarier, and it's a lot further along than even what people are really getting, even from this documentary. So I definitely think there has to be a lot of attention put to kind of seeing what we can do with it.
Malin, how about you?
Well, at the end of the day, I can see a good side to the whole social media thing, but the bad side is kind of like what he alluded to. Like it's been said in boxing, the punch that knocks you out is the one that you don't see. And at the end of the day, when it comes to responsibility, somebody has to see a threat to respond to a threat. And people don't see just talking, posting pictures as a threat. It doesn't register in people's minds that there's a threatening layer to this. Also, on top of this, we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country. We have an epidemic of psychiatric drug use in this country, like something like women between the ages of like 25 to 35, like 10 to 20% are on some type of psychiatric medication. This here makes people vulnerable to suggestion, opens people up to ideas that normally would have no influence over them. And this is the area where social media sits in. People are lonely. People have holes in their psyche and emotional and emotion. So it's not just as easy as, it doesn't matter if you put a warning. I mean, like cigarette smokers, like there's like dead babies in Canada on packs of cigarettes. People don't know, they put a dead baby as an icon on packs of cigarettes in Canada, and people still smoke. It's not warning.
I was going to make a point about the warning.
Like,
no, it's same in Europe. It's like smoking kills, and it's like people are like, "I'll take the pack with the smoking kills logo."
Give me a pack of death sticks.
Yeah.
I saw one in Ecuador, and like his eye was rotting off. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, listen, I would like to assume that if somebody told me to pack a bag and put my sneakers at the end of the bed because the Hale-Bopp comet was coming to take me to a better place, then I probably wouldn't listen. But I wonder, when you think about suggestion, throughout history, when people have organized together in a place, in a physical location. Take Waco. I mean, there's Jonestown. Take all of these things that have ever happened historically. Take the wild, wild country. It happened in Oregon, right? All of these things. Good shit hasn't happened. It hasn't ended well. Now we're organizing electronically. And we're organizing not like hundreds of people or thousands of people, but millions of people.
Yes.
And we're not only organizing them where like it requires little to no effort to organize, and we allow you to choose electives. Like you can show up at, Jonestown, and you could find 5 million people just like you. And then, or you can find 5 million people that are totally different than you that are over here in this side of Jonestown. Like you don't have to all be the same, but you're all on the platform and you're all feeding your information. So over time, you'll all assimilate. Like if you think about it in the Dr. Evil way, the idea of giving you places to go where you can find people like you is all towards the goal of assimilation. And that is freaking scary. That is scary. Clint, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I think I might want to degrade my assertion that the singularity has occurred to I'm not sure it has, and that's what makes me nervous. I like what Rack was saying about how there's good things that can come from it, and to expand on that, maybe not just helping you get the products that you want real quick, but maybe also you could predict people who might be inclined to commit suicide or go postal or do something like that. Like things, it could be helpful to understand what's going on. But I think like it's not going to happen on a free platform because there's only one product in a free platform that we've established. So unless it's like something's got to be drastically different for there to be motivation to use this technology in a positive way, I think.
Which is not going to happen. It's always going to be the profits that will derive everything. And that was just a documentary that we just watched, but nothing's going to happen. The guy, the first statement of that guy from Google was, the main guy, he said that I sent an email that I was so addicted to Gmail, sending emails. And I sent an email he wrote something, sent an email to like 4 people. And then that, he thought that he started a revolution, because that email was getting that email got sent to Larry Page, and there were like 5 meetings after that, but nothing happened, right? Nothing happened. That's why, because it's all about the profits.
No, something
right?
happened. He doesn't work at Google anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So,
it was a resume producing.
But then again, he made a documentary, Rich. He was in a documentary, right? So he wanted that. He was like working to create this product that will get everyone hooked. But
did you feel manipulated by him, Rack?
No, I didn't, because I'm like mentally strong. That's what I feel about myself. But again, I felt like he wanted something. He worked to create a product that will get everyone hooked, but then he disassociated himself, from that, because he had like he himself got hooked, but then he wanted to be the good guy. So he was like, let me just create, let me contact Netflix or whoever, make a documentary, be the good guy. But then he's the one who created it, right? And I don't know, I felt like it was like a confession more, and nothing really happened, and nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change because it's all about the profit. Like everybody is like, that's what we want too, right? Everybody wants their life to get better, and that's what he wanted.
Like Star Trek.
John, how about you? What are your thoughts? You've been kind of quiet.
I think he just left.
Just a warning, it's going to sound like a jet engine here. My housekeeper's here. I'm actually, how should I put this? For all the bad things about social media, I think the jury is still out on whether the good outweighs the bad, because I think that there's definitely discussion that needs to be had in regards to the opportunity to create relationships with people that you would have never have done so otherwise. And that's a topic for another day, because we could talk for hours on that. But I think it's something that really needs to be considered.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I think we don't really know what the outcome will be, right? I think what most of us after watching that Social Dilemma was eye-opening around the possible trajectory and the level of manipulation that takes place in order to monetize, right? Like, I think a lot of this is the driver for monetization in order to keep the platforms alive, right? So the platforms can do plenty of good, but it's kind of balanced out by this need for monetization in order to keep the platforms doing good. And it's like this juxtaposition of those two things. I think that makes it a really interesting conversation. All right. Has anyone watched the first episode of Next?
No.
Or even know what it is? There's a new show on Fox called Next, and it's about AI. It's actually the first episode. It's kind of like if Jack Bauer was doing a show about AI, it would be Next. But the first episode wasn't bad, so I would suggest watching it. All right, cool. I enjoyed this format. Has anyone seen the documentary AlphaGo?
I have that Google one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, it was
else?
like it's an old one, right?
Yeah, it's older. Has anyone else has seen it? I think we should do another one of these after everyone watches AlphaGo. Around, and it should be focused on the power of AI. Because AlphaGo does a really good job of like
telling you how AI.
Yeah, there's a piece in the documentary. I think everyone should watch it. Maybe next Thursday we'll do one on AlphaGo. But there's a piece in the documentary. And if you don't like, Go is the oldest board game in the world, right? And it's a super complex game. And much like chess masters, they have these different Dom levels, and like I think it's like the top level is like a Dom 9 or something like that. And there's this one guy, he's like a Dom 9 from Korea, I think. Is he from China or Korea? I think he's from Korea.
I think, yeah.
It doesn't matter, Rack.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. For the purposes of this story, he's from China or Korea.
Yeah.
And he engages in kind of the equivalent of a game against Watson that Kasparov played, right? And it's really interesting to watch him play because it shows you, like, as human beings, we will spend our lives like working to perfect, especially a mental craft, like playing a game, like working to train your brain to play that way. And then when you watch how the computer plays the game, it's a totally different game. Like that the human mind can't, it like goes to that thing, like the human mind just isn't ready to grasp. It can't fathom these concepts. And when you watch him play the computer at Go, they have these announcers that are kind of announcing it like it's a sporting event. And they're like, oh my God, oh my God. And it's really like crazy to see what the computer does. So everyone should go watch it, and maybe next Thursday we'll talk about it because it's a really, really interesting concept. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully it was enjoyable and fun for everyone.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Thanks. Night everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Great conversation, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.